The first time a boy wanted to court me, I found out through my brother. Not from the boy, not from his family. From my 14-year-old brother who told me at the breakfast table between bites of scrapple, like it was nothing. Like my entire future hadn't just quietly shifted. I set down my fork. I looked at my mother. She didn't look up from the stove. That was how it started. That was how it always started. My name is Martha. I grew up Old Order Amish in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and this channel is where I finally say the things my community would never allow me to say out loud. If you want to go deeper, the full Amish Insider Guide is in the description. What I'm about to tell you is not the courtship you've seen in documentaries. It's not the buggy rides and the quilting bees and the soft focus version that makes people say how sweet, how simple. What I'm going to tell you is what actually happened. Behind the doors, in the silences, in the spaces between what was allowed and what was real. Stay with me. Because if you've ever wondered what it actually looks like when two people try to find each other inside a system that was never designed to let them, this is that story. Here is what people on the outside almost always get wrong. They see the plain dresses and the modest eyes, and they assume Amish courtship is slow, controlled, safe. It is none of those things. It is fast. It is hidden. It is conducted almost entirely in secret, even from the people who think they know everything about you. And it carries consequences that follow you for the rest of your life, whether you choose correctly or whether you don't. Let me explain how the system actually works, because understanding the structure is the only way to understand why everything I'm about to tell you happened the way it did. In my Old Order community, formal schooling ended at 8th grade. After that, your education became practical. You cooked for large gatherings called frolics. You helped in the barn before dawn. You learned to sew plain dresses without a pattern, from memory, the way your mother had and her mother before her. By 16, you were attending Sunday singings. This is where it begins. Singings are youth gatherings held on Sunday evenings after the main church service. Young people, teenagers mostly, sit on opposite sides of a long table and sing German hymns from the Ausbund, the boys on one side, the girls on the other. And across that table, in the careful space between voices, something else is happening entirely. You are being watched. You are watching back, and everyone in the room knows it, and nobody says it. After the singing ends, the boys begin offering buggy rides home. This is the signal. If a boy drives you home, it means something. It means he is interested. It means the community will notice. It means the conversation your brother will have with you at the breakfast table has already begun, even if you don't know it yet. My first singing, I was 16 years old. I wore my best dress, deep blue, with a freshly starched white apron. My hair was parted straight down the middle, pinned back under my prayer cap, not a strand visible. I had practiced being invisible in exactly the right way, which is its own kind of skill, the art of being noticed without appearing to want to be. I sat across from boys I had known my whole life and suddenly did not know at all, boys who smelled like work and soap and something else I didn't have a name for yet. Boys who kept their eyes forward and yet I could feel them, somehow, the weight of attention that has no manners and no modesty. After the singing, a boy named Elias offered me a ride home. He was 17. His horse was well kept. His buggy had a small lantern that swung gently as we moved down the dark road. We talked about the weather. We talked about his father's new field. We talked about nothing, in the careful Pennsylvania Dutch way that is really a conversation about everything. When I stepped down from the buggy at my father's lane, he said quietly, without looking directly at me, "May I come again?" I said yes. That was it. That was a courtship beginning. No declaration. No permission asked of me directly. Just a question in the dark, and a yes I gave before I fully understood what I was agreeing to. If you want to go deeper, the full Amish Insider Guide is in the description. What followed was a period my community called visiting. Elias would come on Sunday evenings after dark, when the younger children were in bed. He would sit in the front room with me, sometimes with my parents nearby, sometimes not. We would talk. He would leave before anyone from outside could see his horse tied at the post. This is bundling territory. And if you've heard me talk about bundling before, you know that in some communities, the visiting happens in the bedroom. In my district, it was the front room, but the function was the same. Two young people learning each other in the dark, under the full awareness of a community that was watching every signal for what it meant. Here is what nobody tells you about Amish visiting. You are not choosing each other in a vacuum. You are being chosen by a system that has already decided what you are worth and what kind of match you deserve. A girl whose family has a good farm is worth more than a girl whose father has debt. A boy who is baptized is worth more than a boy still on Rumspringa. A girl who is obedient is worth more than a girl who asks questions. I asked questions, not out loud, but in the way I listened, in the way I went quiet when something didn't sit right, in the way my eyes moved to my mother's face to see if she believed what was being said. Those were questions, and the community could read them, even when I never spoke them. Elias came for 4 months. Then he stopped. No explanation, no conversation. My brother told me at breakfast again, the same table, the same scrapple, the same nothing expression on my mother's face. He's visiting someone else now. That's all. That was all there was. I went to the barn, and I stood next to our oldest cow for a long time because she was warm, and she didn't need anything from me. And I did not cry because crying was its own kind of question, and I had already asked too many. This is where I want to stop and tell you something that took me years, and a good therapist and a lot of quiet evenings outside the community to fully understand. Amish courtship is designed to produce marriages, not love. That sounds harsh. I know it sounds harsh. But let me explain what I mean because it's more complicated than it sounds, and the complication is where the truth lives. The Ordnung, the unwritten code that governs every dimension of Amish life, does not have a category for romantic fulfillment. It has a category for godly household, for fruitfulness, for submission and order, and the continuation of the community itself. Love is not opposed to these things. But love is also not required. What this means in practice is that young people are moved toward marriage with the same practical urgency applied to everything else in Amish life. Fields are planted in their season, animals are bred at the right time, children are given in marriage when the community decides they are ready. Ready does not mean what you think it means. Ready means baptized. Ready means able to run a household. Ready means obedient enough not to cause trouble, and young enough not to have developed too many opinions. I was all of those things mostly by 18. The second boy was named Samuel. He was 20. He had his own land, a small piece his father had given him, 40 acres on the east side of the district. He had a reputation for being steady, which in the Amish world is the highest compliment a young man can receive. It means he doesn't surprise you. It means he is predictable in the way a good tool is predictable. You pick it up and it does what you expect. Samuel came on Sundays for 2 months before he asked my father. He asked my father before he asked me. This is how it works. This is how it has always worked. The boy approaches the girl's father and asks permission to marry her. The father consults the mother. Now, sometimes the girl is consulted, sometimes she is told. I was told. My mother came to me on a Wednesday afternoon while I was hanging washing on the line. She stood beside me and we hung sheets for a little while without speaking. Then she said quietly, the way she said most important things, "Samuel spoke to your father." I kept hanging sheets. I could feel my hands moving, the wooden pins, the weight of the damp fabric, the smell of lye and wind. I said, "What did father say?" She said, "He said yes." I said, "What do I say?" She looked at me then. And what I saw on her face was not cruelty and it was not indifference. It was something I understand much better now, standing outside the community looking back in. It was the face of a woman who had also been told once, beside a clothesline, or its equivalent, and who had learned to call that telling a blessing. She said, "You say yes, Martha, and then you build something from it. If you want to go deeper, the full Amish Insider Guide is in the description. I want to be careful here. I want to be fair to what was real. Samuel was not unkind. He was exactly what his reputation said he was: steady, predictable. He worked from before dawn without complaint. He was patient with animals, which I have always believed tells you more about a person than almost anything else. He did not raise his voice. He brought me the first wildflowers of spring the week before our engagement was announced, just set them on the porch rail without ceremony, because he was not a man of ceremony, and walked back to his work. I kept those flowers until they were dust. So when I tell you that I was not in love with Samuel the way the English world means that phrase, I am not also telling you that there was nothing there. There was something quieter than what the songs describe. Something built from proximity and shared mornings and the particular way he looked up from his work when I brought water out to the field, like I was a thing he had decided to be grateful for. I am telling you that nobody ever asked me if that was enough, and that is the part that still sits in me like a stone. Our engagement was announced in church. This is called the Jamai. The bishop stands and reads two names together, and the community receives it the way they receive everything, with quiet, with nods, with the understanding that God has ordered it and the ordnung has confirmed it. I sat on the women's side of the room in my best cap, and I heard my name next to Samuel's name, and I felt something I still don't have the exact right word for. It was not happiness. It was not grief. It was the feeling of a door closing, gently, behind you, and understanding that the room you are now in is not small. It has a window and a bed and a table, and a life can be lived in it, but also the door is closed and you are the only one who seems to have noticed. After the service, the women came to me. They hugged me. They said, "What a good man." They said, "What a good farm." They asked how many children I hoped God would send. Nobody asked how I felt. Not one person. Not my mother. Not my closest friend. Not even my younger sister, who loved me fiercely and who would have sat with me all night if I had told her to. Because in my community, how you feel about your engagement is not a category that exists. You are grateful. You are obedient. You are building a godly household. Everything else is hogmutt, pride, the greatest sin of all. I left when I was 24. The leaving is its own story, long and full of things I am still finding words for. The shunning that came after. The phone calls that rang once and went silent. The letter my mother sent that I read standing in the parking lot of a gas station in the rain, reading it 4 times before I understood that she had written it to a version of me that no longer existed, and that she would not be updating her records. But here is what I want to tell you, before I tell you the rest. I do not look back at Amish Courtship and see only damage. I am capable of that. There are nights when I am capable of that. But it is not the whole truth. And I promised myself when I started this channel that I would only speak whole truths, even when the partial ones are easier. The whole truth is this. Inside a system that never once asked me what I wanted, I learned how to pay close attention to another person. I learned to read the language beneath language, the pause before the answer, the way a hand moves when something is left unsaid. I learned that steadiness, real steadiness, not the performed kind, but the kind that gets up before dawn for 30 years and does what needs doing, is not a small thing. It is not a romantic thing, but it is not a small thing. I also learned that none of that is a substitute for being asked what you want, for being told that your answer matters, for living inside a courtship that is designed to find out who you are rather than to slot you into the role the community has already decided you should fill. If you want to go deeper, the full Amish Insider Guide is in the description. My therapist asked me once what I would have said if someone had asked me, beside that clothesline, before my mother told me to say yes. I thought about it for a long time. I thought about Elias, with his swinging lantern in the dark. I thought about Samuel and his wildflowers left without ceremony on the porch rail. I thought about that Sunday singing, 16 years old, practicing the art of being noticed without appearing to want it. And I said, I think I would have asked for more time, not to refuse, not to escape. Just more time to find out what I actually felt before someone else decided what I was allowed to feel. She wrote that down, and then she looked up at me and said, That's not a small thing to want, Martha. No, it isn't. If you grew up in a world where your yes was assumed before you opened your mouth, I see you. If you were told that obedience and readiness were the same thing, you were told something that was not true. If you loved people inside a system that didn't know how to ask what you needed, I see you too. You weren't wrong for wanting to be asked. You were human. And being human was never something to apologize for. Tell me in the comments. Did any part of this feel familiar? Tell me your story if you're ready. And if you want to keep hearing from behind the prayer cap, subscribe to Hannah the Amish Girl. There is still so much I haven't said. If you want to go deeper, the full Amish Insider Guide is in the description. Choose your freedoms wisely. They might just save your life.